The Right Side with Doug Billings.
Hey everybody, my name is General Mike Flynn, and I'm here to do a big shout out for my great friend and one of the best in the business, Mr. Doug Billings. Right Side with Doug Billings, Right Side with Doug Billings. Doug is the future of the airwaves when it comes to independent broadcasters and podcasters. He is the new Rush Limbaugh. He's exactly what America needs right now, looking for honesty, looking for wisdom, looking for truth, looking for patriotism. Listen to Doug Billings at Right Side with Doug Billings. God bless you and God bless America, and thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are winning. We're winning, winning, winning. Welcome to The Right Side with Doug Billings. Are you ready?
We are not liberal snowflakes who melt away in the face of tragedy, adversity, and challenge. We are a covenant nation under God, and his divine providence is not dead and it's not gone. It is living within each and every one of you. And you will bring it to life in such a way that the world has never seen before. We never back down. We never give up. We march forward.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to The Right Side with Doug Billings. I admit it, I take a lot of joy to be with you as we point out the intellectual immaturity of liberals everywhere. It's a lot of fun to do that every day. I had the opportunity to meet a gentleman by the name of Will Scharf from the state of Missouri a few months ago during one of the Lincoln and Reagan Day conservative dinners that is held throughout many states in our republic during this time of year. Will is an attorney. He is on President Trump's legal team. You've seen him on Fox News and MSNBC and all of the TV stations. You've seen him. They all use him to give updates on the Trump campaign and the process at which he is at with regards to his legal defense. He's also a resident of the state of Missouri and running for that state's district attorney, or attorney general, I should say. Will Scharf, you can find him at votescharf.com. His last name is spelled S-C-H-A-R-F. Will Scharf at the website votescharf.com. Right now, my conversation with a friend of mine, attorney Will Scharf. Hi, everybody. Welcome to The Right Side with Doug Billings. Without further ado, here's my guest and my new friend. I've met this guy a couple of times, thoroughly impressed with him. He's a candidate for the Missouri State Attorney General position and a key member of President Trump's legal team. Will Scharf from Missouri. Will, welcome to the show.
Great to be with you, Doug. Thanks so much for having me on.
You're welcome. Hey, I've got to tell you, I've loved getting to know you and hearing what you have to say. I've seen you lately, on Fox News a lot. You're out there talking to a lot of the pundits on their shows about President Trump and this lawfare that's being waged against him. The audience of this show is keenly interested in all of that. So why don't we start there? Why don't you give us the latest on what's going on with President Trump up in New York and in any other case that you might be involved?
Yeah, well, you put it exactly right. This is a campaign of lawfare aimed at interfering with the 2024 election. Joe Biden actually said pretty openly about a year and a half ago that he was going to use the courts to make sure that President Trump couldn't be president again. And then he and his people have just gone out and executed on that game plan. We're obviously dealing with 4 criminal indictments in Florida, Washington, D.C., New York, and Georgia. We have endless civil cases. They tried and failed to actually kick President Trump off the ballot. That was the Colorado case that we took up to the U.S. Supreme Court. But it's been a daunting process just dealing with this flood of litigation, flood of criminal cases. The latest is the ongoing New York trial. We think that's the only criminal case that will actually go to trial before the election. It's an absurd case. It's based on a totally fake legal theory that just doesn't make any sense. Numerous legal commentators, including some on the left, have said that this case should have never been brought in the first place. Fortunately, so far, trial seems to be going very well. Witness after witness after witness has come up, and really, they don't have any evidence that's at all inculpatory of President Trump. I believe because President Trump did nothing wrong, and we've seen on cross-examination some of these witnesses just get absolutely shredded by our legal team, by our trial team, Todd Blanche and Emile Beauvais. I think that's going to continue in the coming weeks as we get into the meat of the trial. But the efforts at at election interference, at political interference, from this case in particular are profound. We're dealing with this absurd gag order that Judge Merchan entered against President Trump and our team. Today, actually, President Trump was fined for the 10th time under that gag order. Judge Merchan is threatening to throw President Trump in jail if he continues to, in Judge Merchan's mind, violate this gag order. We've challenged the gag order on appeal. This week, we're queuing it up for a more rapid decision. We're going to continue challenging it on appeal because it's blatantly unconstitutional. It just doesn't make any sense if you understand the law around the First Amendment, around prior restraints, around the way that these sorts of things are supposed to work. So we're hopeful we can get President Trump some relief there.
Certainly enjoy hearing all that. Let me get into some specifics about the trial that I've seen. And obviously, Will, I am not an attorney, nor do I play one on TV. I want to get your take on the last round of witnesses. You know, we had Hope Hicks come up as a witness. What does your gut tell you about her with regards to how it affects Trump, either in the pro column or the con column?
Yeah, I think if you look at I'd actually encourage your listeners just pull the transcripts and read it, read her testimony. I think Hope was a great witness for us. You look at everything that she said, both on direct and on cross, and it leads to the conclusion that President Trump did nothing wrong here. That these were, the underlying payments were made for any number of reasons which weren't really election related, which is core to the prosecution's theory. I'm dumbfounded that the prosecution, the DA Alvin Bragg's team, called her as a witness because of how damaging she really was to their case. I think we're going to see more of that in the coming days as these witnesses come up and really provide testimony that, almost for us as opposed to for them. But yeah, I think that was a real mistake on their part.
I thought the same thing, Will. And as I look at this, again, you're the expert, but as I look at all of the lawfare that's been arrayed against President Trump, this case in New York seems to be the most ridiculous of all of them. I mean, absolutely ridiculous. I mean, am I close to the truth on that? Is of everything that he's facing, is this the most ridiculous?
Yeah, the case just doesn't make sense. They referred to it in the New York DA's office as the zombie case for years because no one wanted to bring it, but it just wouldn't die, that it just sort of bumped around in the office forever. Let me just run through the actual allegations here because I think that'll explain to your listeners just how absurd it is. So back in 2017, in President Trump's personal ledger, his private records, there are recordings made of payments to Michael Cohen, who was President Trump's attorney, and those payments were recorded as legal retainer payments. The allegation is that those business records were fraudulent. They were entered with an intent to defraud, and that they were entered with the intent to cover up another felony offense. And the other felony offense, the prosecution's been coy about actually saying what they're concerned with there. But the thing they seem to be circling around now is a New York law that makes it a felony basically to interfere in an election. So they're saying that these business records, which were entered in 2017, were entered fraudulently at President Trump's direction in order to cover up a campaign of election interference in 2016. Now, there are major problems with this whole theory. First of all, President Trump didn't make these records. They were made by a mid-level Trump organization official in New York while he was running the country from Washington, D.C. Second, the records were accurate. They accurately reflected payments to Trump's lawyer as legal retainer payments. Third, there's no intent to defraud there. These were private records. These weren't records that were being provided to banks or being provided to the FEC. This is just President Trump's personal ledger. So even if they were inaccurate, proving intent to defraud, to me, seems impossible. And then third, these records weren't being made with the intent to cover up anything. This has nothing to do with the 2016 election. And I think that that's all going to come out and become more clear as we continue proceeding through the case and ultimately at closing arguments. But just for 4, 5, 6 independent reasons, this case just has no legal merit whatsoever.
That's why I've said on this show that, God forbid we have a setback, and because you never know, a judge in New York, a jury in New York, and so forth. The appeal process, I have said on the show, have no fear, ladies and gentlemen. In the appeal process, Trump will prevail through all of this if he does, in fact, have a setback, which would be ridiculous. So I've said that. And as you hear those words from me, I want to, before we start talking about you and your run for Attorney General in the state of Missouri, which I want to get to, one last question about this with President Trump. You were part of jury selection. You're sitting there in the courtroom. You see the jury every day. So part A of the question is, how comfortable you must be. You felt good enough to choose the jury members that were selected. A, I assume that's true. And then B, what does your gut tell you about their reactions? How do you read the jury day by day? Any sense of, eye rolls or going, oh my gosh, where are you? I mean, frustration. What's your take on that?
So I'm not on the trial team on this case. I'm on our appellate team. So I've been involved in briefs and motions, but I didn't have a direct role in picking the jury. I will tell you, though, that I have faith in the American jury system. I think even in a place like New York, you put 12 people in a room. If the facts are on your side and the law are on your side, I just don't see how these people are going to vote to convict President Trump, even if they don't like the guy, even if they're not on his side politically. I think juries more often than not tend to get things right. We've obviously seen exceptions to that, particularly in Washington, D.C. But I think our team is confident that if we lay out the facts the way that we want to, the way that we plan to, that the jury will end up doing the right thing here and voting to acquit. That's certainly my hope. It's our whole team's hope. It's President Trump's hope. As you said, if that doesn't go the way we think, we'll have a vigorous appeal in this case. And I think at the end of the day, justice will prevail. Picking a jury is always complicated. There are a lot of things you have to balance. This was a pretty quick jury selection process for a case like this. They moved through it in a week. I think we all would have liked some more time. The prosecution probably would have liked some more time as well. But I think we're confident in our case and confident that the jury will be able to see through the various deficiencies in the DA's office case. So we feel good about that whole process.
All right. And through it all, Trump remains, at least he appears to be. I've been fortunate enough to see him at Mar-a-Lago a couple of times, and once up at Bedminster. Just amazing how the guy remains in high spirits and in good humor, and he continues on with life. It's amazing that he can endure and remain in such good spirits.
He has just boundless energy. It's pretty incredible to watch. I mean, he'll leave court, go out and do a campaign rally, come back. He's flying all over the country when he's not in court. The man's just unstoppable. And we've seen that obviously since 2015 and 2016. But he just doesn't slow down. And it's impressive to see.
Will, let's talk now about your run for Attorney General in the state of Missouri. I was born and raised in Missouri, in Jackson County. A big shout out to the Brookside area and to Grandview, Missouri, where I went to high school. So Missouri's got a soft and special place in my heart. Love it. I love the state. Tell us about your campaign. First of all, tell us where people can find you to get information about your campaign.
Sure. Our website is votescharf.com, VOTESCHARF.com. And you can find me on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Truth Social, all at Will Scharf. The core thesis behind our campaign is that the political insiders in Jefferson City have just run this state into the ground. You have a real problem with corruption, with special interest and lobbyist capture of our state government. I mean, every statewide office holder is a Republican. We have Republican supermajorities in both houses of the legislature. And yet we don't get big, bold, conservative stuff done in this state the way that we've seen in other deep red states. Our streets are overrun with crime. Taxes are high. Our education system's an absolute mess. And nobody seems to be stepping into the breach to fix things. So really, I decided to run because I was just sick and tired of the Jefferson City establishment, sick and tired of their way of doing business. And we've been at it over a year and a half now. And in every corner of the state, we've heard the same dissatisfaction with the political establishment here. And the grassroots support for our campaign has really been, it's been incredible. It's been humbling. It's just been wonderful to see how many Missourians want to build a better, more conservative future for this state. So we're really excited. We're under 100 days now. We're in kind of the final stretch here. And we think we're going to have a really good August.
You've got that primary on August 6th. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. Now, and I think they are, look, You mentioned Grassroots, and I love the Grassroots. We've been talking on the show for 4 years about local involvement having a national impact and so forth. And conservatives, when we're honest with ourselves, will, for the last several generations, I mean several, probably over 100 years, conservatives have done some great things. We've gone to war. We've won these great wars. We've raised families with traditional American values, but we have not, if we're honest with ourselves, we have not been thoroughly involved in our local levels of government. And that's beginning to change for many reasons, but primarily, I think, because of the purposeful chaos that Administrator Biden, as I call him, and his Communist Socialist Party. I think the Democrat Party is dead. I think they blended communism and socialism together. I call them the Communist Socialist Party. They are clearly, evidence of the obvious is clear. They are not a pro-America political party. And I think it's waking people up at the grassroots level. And I think what you say resonates. You are a candidate for a political office who's not afraid to say that 2020's presidential election was stolen. And I think, that's a huge deal. It gets, we've 4 years and people tend to forget and it becomes less and less. But for me, and you and I have discussed this when we're together at these various events, if a candidate can't say that, that's for me an indication that that candidate is a rhino.
Yeah. Look, I defy anybody to read Molly Hemingway's book, Rigged, and come away from that thinking that the election was fair. Just the basic numbers, the basic chronology, what actually happened in 2020. There's absolutely no doubt in my mind that it was the most biased, rigged, unfair election in American history. It was stolen from President Trump because they were so scared of what he would be able to achieve for the country if he had another 4 years. Just the basic numbers, 159 million votes in the total official tally. Of those, over 100 million were early and absentee votes, totally unprecedented in American history. Major custody issues in terms of the way ballots were retained prior to being counted. The machines were a huge issue, and anyone who says otherwise, Judge Tottenberg, who's an Obama-appointed judge in Georgia, issued a summary judgment ruling last year. This is an Obama-appointed judge that said that the Dominion voting machines used in the 2020 election, also in 2022 in the state of Georgia, were so insecure that their use constituted a federal civil rights violation. This is an Obama-appointed federal judge. You can't tell me that the count was fair. You can't tell me the election was fair. And Republican candidates who want to close their eyes to what happened in 2020, who just want to move on from it, they're the reason we keep losing elections. If we don't have fair elections, the Democrats are just going to run this country forever because Democrats have been lying, cheating, and stealing their way to elections for 2 centuries. We need to be willing to play hardball with them. We need to call a spade, and we need to call out all of these election shenanigans that we know they're going to try again this cycle as well.
And when I say to you, with regards to violent crime in America, that I firmly believe in blue states especially, that we have prosecutors, district attorneys and prosecutors and so forth, who are Democrat/communist socialist. These people are not prosecuting with extreme prejudice violent criminals. And if in the off chance that they are prosecuting these guys, they're not held in jail very long. They're given light sentences. They're back out on the streets and they're committing more crime. We can see it with some of these mass shootings. The radical liberal woke mob will try to convince us it's a gun problem. What we've got is a series of laws that are thoroughly already enough. If we would just enforce those laws, if we would have prosecutors, district attorneys, and so forth with the backbone to, again, prosecute with extreme prejudice, we would see a good portion of these problems, I think, be resolved. Agree, disagree? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, 100%. I was a violent crime prosecutor in St. Louis. It's really simple. If you don't punish violent crime, you get more violent crime. And that's what we're seeing on our streets in Missouri. That's what we're seeing around the country. If somebody can commit a serious crime and get bailed out 24 hours later, maybe wait 2 years before they go to trial, and then, as you said, get a slap on the wrist, maybe probation or 90-day incarceration in a local jail or something like that, that's just not a deterrent to crime. The science on this has been settled since, Operation Ceasefire in Boston in the 90s, obviously Rudy Giuliani in New York. If you focus on locking up violent criminals, your crime problem just goes away. And that's what we need to be doing. If you're an armed robber, if you're, illegally in possession of a firearm, if you're I mean, if you're in one of these categories with a high propensity to commit future violent crimes, you need to be taken off the streets. And this idea that the way around crime is to, quote unquote, you always hear this from leftists, address the root causes. We've tried that. It failed. It's time to lock these people up, take back our city streets, and make the whole country safer for Americans who just want to go about their everyday lives.
So when you win the election in Missouri for a district attorney, I'm just going to put it out there, when you win, what the agenda with regards to this and election fraud, violence in the streets and so forth, voting machines. I know you've got to work with the Secretary of State who has a hand in that as well. What is your first, and we've got about 3 minutes left, Will, what does your first 100 days look like in Missouri should you win?
Well, look, the legislature needs to pass laws on the crime issue. We need much tougher pretrial detention laws. We need real truth in sentencing laws. I mean, that's going to be a piece of it. We need to work with local prosecutors to make sure that violent criminals are prosecuted aggressively. I'm deeply committed to doing that. On the election front, we need secure elections. We need to shore up our election laws, whether it's on the machines, whether it's ballot custody issues, whether it's signature verification issues. Just across the board, we need to make sure that we have the most secure elections possible. I've also promised that I'll investigate our State Department of Education. It's a massive department, $10 billion budget. I think it's deeply corrupted. We're going to be hitting them with sunshine requests on day one and proceed from there. I mean, this is like the root of corruption in Jefferson City is buried deep, and we need to start doing the hard work of uncovering what all these unelected state bureaucrats are doing to our state. So that's another big one for me. It's one of my few concrete campaign promises is just to investigate DESI. We've got to get it done. And then, I pray to God that Joe Biden's not still in the White House by the time I take office. If he is, we're going to hold the federal government accountable every single day. I want to be suing in court constantly to frustrate this radical leftist agenda that we're seeing. Hopefully President Trump's there, and then maybe my lawyers will be able to sleep once in a while. But
Right. Well, Will, I can't thank you enough for taking the time. I think what you've got to say is important. I think the people of Missouri and the nation, the republic, they're going to listen to you, see you, and hear you, and say, finally, somebody calling it like it is with regards to crime, especially violent crime, the theft of an American presidential election, and going forward from there. And of course, your work with the defense of President Trump, all appreciated by certainly members of this audience, and I would wager to say the majority of people around the country. So thank you for taking time.
Thanks so much for having me, Doug. Always great talking to you, and hopefully we'll see each other on the trail again soon.
I appreciate it. And it's votescharf.com, correct?
Yes, sir.
We'll have that information on the screen for you, ladies and gentlemen. My friend Will Scharf from the great state of Missouri, running for district attorney. Check him out at votescharf.com. God bless you, ladies and gentlemen. Stay with me. I'll be right back.
The Right Side with Doug Billings.